All right, it is the morning after. Welcome in. I hear the Las Vegas airport is a complete disaster. Some of you probably watching in some type of line. I decided to make my flight a little bit later, just in case the airport was indeed a complete disaster. And so I would be able to talk to you on the morning after. I wrote this article last night from the 49ers locker room. What I really tried to do was capture the agony of defeat in there. For some of you who are 49ers fans, it might be therapeutic. I'm just interested in objective reporting. I'm interested in the people. I'm interested in talking about the emotions, because to tell a story fairly, you can't just hover into a locker room when things are going well, when a team is winning, or you can't just sit at the press conference and vulture questions, which I vulture for answers. You got to go and actually talk to individuals, observe what's going on. And I saw Dre Greenlaw walk out of that place on crutches, and I thought it was emblematic of the devastation that had inflicted the 49ers. You can read the first paragraph here. Christian McCaffrey looked like he'd seen a ghost in the 49ers locker room. He sat upright and stone-faced, facing away from his stall. Fullback Kyle Juszczyk, seated next to the running back, whispered occasional words of commiseration to McCaffrey. But it clearly did little to soothe the pain. McCaffrey remained rigid. He moved once over several minutes to rest his head against his locker. Nothing could alleviate the agony so soon after that Super Bowl 58 defeat. In a city that's hosted so many heavyweight bouts, the 49ers had lost a 15-round slobber knocker to the dynastic Kansas City Chiefs, 25-22. The fact that it took nearly 75 minutes of football to reach a decision only made it hurt more for the 49ers. Fred Warner said that he was in tears at halftime when he saw Dre Greenlaw in there following the torn Achilles. And he wanted to go and win it for Dre Greenlaw. Unfortunately for the 49ers, they couldn't get it done. So what went wrong? What went right for the 49ers? It's never as simple as social media tries to make it out to be. In fact, I see a lot of low-level analysis on social media, and I'm just going to shut it all down. If you don't want to see somebody shut down low-level analysis, turn off the channel right now. I'm going to be objective. I'm going to be fair. I'm going to take this low-level analysis and throw it out the window. It has no chance with me on this show. I'm sick of it. People decide to not live in reality. And the first thing that we have to talk about is that Brock Purdy went toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes. Brock Purdy is a godsend for the 49ers. The 49ers are Super Bowl favorites already for next season, by the way. They are the opening favorites. I think they're like plus 550. The Chiefs are plus 750. The biggest reason the 49ers are Super Bowl favorites is because Brock Purdy is an elite quarterback. Brock Purdy demonstrated that he was an elite quarterback this year without a single NFL offseason. He didn't have an offseason last year when he blew up his elbow against the Eagles. He's now going to have a full offseason. He went toe-to-toe for 75 minutes with Patrick Mahomes. And if the 49ers had not blown a protection on the 3rd down and 4 in overtime, where I don't know if it was Spencer Burford's fault or Colton McKivitt's fault, but somebody on the right side decided to not block Chris Jones. If that hadn't happened, Brock Purdy would have led a touchdown drive in overtime, and the outcome of this game is probably different. But Purdy was great off schedule. Purdy was great throwing off the numbers. Purdy was great throwing intermediate passes over the middle, despite the fact that the Chiefs did this. And I will be honest right here. Some of this might have been on Brock Purdy. The Chiefs defense generated a season-high 9 unblocked pressures in Super Bowl 58, all of which came on blitzes. Steve Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator for Kansas City, delivered an awesome game plan. No, the 49ers did not need to run the ball more. This is more low-level analysis. Run it more. What the hell do you mean by run it more? I could show you some of the data as far as running the ball in this football game and how it wasn't working for the 49ers because Steve Spagnuolo was run blitzing so damn aggressively on early downs. But take a look at this right here. And this is going to tie into what we discuss about Brock Purdy. This is the 49ers early rush EPA per play and early pass EPA per play on 1st and 2nd down. Whenever they ran the ball on 1st and 2nd down, they averaged negative 0.3 points per play. That's terrible. That's why it's in dark purple. Whenever they passed on early downs, they were way more efficient. That tells you that the Chiefs were selling out against early down runs, so they had to pass. Same thing over here. Series conversion rate, series that started with a run did not do well for the 49ers. Series that started with a pass did do well with the 49ers. The 49ers had successful series 56% of the time when they started with a run and 82.4% of the time when they started with a pass. So they had to pass to set up the run in this football game. They didn't need to run more. And yes, they trusted Brock Purdy. He went toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes, and that's why there should be a lot of optimism about the 49ers moving forward. You can believe two things at once, that this was a gut-wrenching, devastating loss. It might have been the most agonizing loss in franchise history. I get it. They lost in a 15-round prize fight. But at the end of the day, the 49ers and the Chiefs are the class of the NFL. Kansas City's above San Francisco. They've prevented them from winning 2 Super Bowls. And the 49ers have been the second most successful franchise over the past 5 years. And the 49ers are favored to win the Super Bowl already next season. And that comes back down to the fact that there is belief in who they have at quarterback. Brock Purdy fought last night. Brock Purdy was not the problem last night. We see this low-level analysis trying to cast blame on Brock Purdy, and it's just not tethered in any sort of reality. It's not tethered in any sort of knowledge of the sport of football. So Purdy, I thought that there was one got nullified by the Trent Williams hold, but he had that off-schedule play in the first half where he escaped the pocket, rolled to his left, flipped his hips, threw back across the field. I think it was George Kittle that actually made the catch, and that was obviously something that got wiped off of the scoreboard because the 49ers held on the play. There was several damaging holding penalties and false start penalties. And I get it that Kyle Shanahan has taken his share of heat, and there probably should be more heat on the coaching staff than on any of the players because of a couple of reasons. One, all the procedure penalties, and the players have to execute these things as well. But for whatever reason, all responsibility is ultimately going to crawl its way up the entire food chain, and it's going to hit the coaching staff. And when you do have all those procedure penalties in a relatively quiet stadium, well, they shouldn't happen. Those were on the 49ers. But the overtime strategy is something that's going to be discussed a lot. And obviously the Chiefs won in overtime, so not everything went right in that period. But the 49ers decided to take the ball first, even though the new overtime rules dictated that both teams have a chance the second team has a chance to rebut, even if the first team scores a touchdown on that opening drive. So a lot of people said, well, hey, the 49ers need to take the ball second so they know what they need to do. They know what the Chiefs have done. There's been criticism because I saw that there was a report today. Some of the 49ers players were saying, well, we didn't exactly know what the overtime rules were. To me, that's, the players are just in charge to carry out the strategy by the coaching staff. As long as the coaching staff knew what the overtime rules were, I don't think it impacted what happened on the football field. And Shanahan had a reason for taking the ball first in overtime. And there are actually 2 reasons. One is he stated that he wanted the third possession if it got to that, because that would have been sudden death, because you have one drive and then the other team gets the rebut. And then if it's tied after those 2 drives, then it's sudden death. So Shanahan wanted the benefit of the first sudden death possession. Fine, that's fair enough. But I thought that the more compelling reason for wanting the ball first was how regulation ended. The 49ers at the end of regulation were completely gassed defensively. Mahomes had driven the length of the field all the way down to about the 10-yard line. And the 49ers had just lost 2 defensive backs on one play, Jair Brown and Deommodore Lenoir. And Kansas City had 9 seconds to go, and the 49ers had to play with 3 backup DBs because Talanoa Hufanga was already out, and they had to get a stop because the game would have been over without a stop. They needed to force Kansas City into a field goal. That was one of the more heroic stands of the game. The 49ers executed it. They had George Odom in the game on that play. George Odom hadn't played much safety at all for this football team this season. George Odom and Ambry Thomas came in. They both got the job done. The Chiefs decided to throw to Travis Kelce against Fred Warner, who got the job done on the far side over there near the pylon. And the 49ers exhaled and went to overtime with their defense exhausted, but it had survived the round. I talk about this being a 15-round prize fight. They just needed to get to the bell. They just needed to get to the end of the round. And then it made sense from an overtime strategy perspective to not expose that same exhausted and injured defense to more action immediately. So, I thought that was the most compelling reason to give the offense the ball first. And, guess what? The 49ers, Brock Purdy got the ball at the start of overtime and drove the 49ers the length of the field, made an epically good off-schedule throw to Kyle Juszczyk there over near the sideline, set the 49ers up with 1st and 10 deep inside Kansas City territory, and would have thrown a touchdown pass to Brandon Ayuk had the 49ers not blown that protection to Chris Jones. The Chiefs ran a blitz. It was one of the Spagnuolo blitzes, one of the 9 that came in untouched. And that blitz, for whatever reason, confused the right side of the protection, and Brock Purdy didn't have a chance. But we can learn a couple things from that play. A, if the 49ers had executed better protection, the overtime strategy wouldn't be talked about right now. And B, if the 49ers had executed better protection, Brock Purdy would have done the same thing as Patrick Mahomes, and that's lead a touchdown drive in overtime. I'll extend that and say that if Patrick Mahomes were behind that 49ers protection, that blown blocking up front, he also wouldn't have scored. So what does that leave us with? Logically, that leaves us with the 49ers problem in this game was this. They didn't pick up these pressures. And again, I'll go back and I'll say maybe some of this was Brock Purdy's fault, but I don't think that last one was. And I think that based on how good Brock Purdy was against the blitz this season, I think that most of this, and we're going to watch the tape and we're going to talk to the 49ers and we're going to dissect this, but I think most of this falls on schematics and on the offensive line. That's going to be my guess. I'm using some circumstantial data to draw this early conclusion, but that's going to be my guess. But ultimately, the 49ers did not protect it well enough, especially against some of these blitzes, to win this football game. Funny enough, that was the big takeaway coming out of Super Bowl 54 as well. So what does that mean? Does it mean invest more in the offensive line? Does it mean one of the things on the right side was that John Feliciano went down with an injury, so Spencer Burford had to come in. I don't know if that created any confusion as far as communication went, but I think that, offensive line investment is something that we talk about a lot with the 49ers. It's something that they've obviously done. They paid Trent Williams the most money ever for a tackle. They brought in Alex Mack at center. Alex Mack was able to shepherd along Jake Brendel, who took over that center job. They used a second-round draft pick on Aaron Banks. But I think that the right side of that offensive line could obviously still use some bolstering. That has been the weakness. It was in 2019. And I think it's always wise to continue pouring resources into the offensive line. It's not as if the 49ers have completely ignored the line. It's just that they've built a line where the left side is stronger than the right. And it seemed to me that the Chiefs in both of the Super Bowl wins against the 49ers capitalized on the right side of the line. And yesterday, Spagnuolo is one of the better defensive coordinators in football, capitalized on it with big-time blitzes. I mean, it was those 9 blitzes that got in untouched. That's a problem. So I think across the board, the 49ers have to be better. The protections are going to have to get picked up, but Brock Purdy's also entering his first offseason here. He's going to develop better answers against these blitzes because these are exotic new looks that he saw that obviously Spagnuolo and the Chiefs had devised over the course of 2 weeks leading up to the Super Bowl. They saw a quarterback who had excelled against the blitz during the course of the regular season. Well, this quarterback now is going to have a chance to look at the tape of what went wrong in this Super Bowl and try to correct that moving forward into next year where he turns 25 years old. So 24-year-old Brock Purdy went toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes. That's great for the 49ers. What wasn't so great was the way that the offense was not able to protect some of that blitzing option. I will say, too, that the 49ers played with title-caliber heart on defense. We've talked so much about the effort lapses against Detroit in the NFC Championship game. There were no effort lapses in this game. Those guys left it all out on the field. No regrets as far as that went. Chase Young earned himself a lot of money with that game yesterday. Somebody's going to go and pay Chase Young. It probably won't be the 49ers because I think that he's going to, the pass rush move that he showed on Donovan Smith there in the first half just blew by him. That showed that Chase Young still has some real explosiveness left in that knee. He chased down Patrick Mahomes a little bit later in the first half. I thought he played the run well in this game. There was no question about effort in this one. Nick Bosa was fantastic. Did Nick Bosa bite on a read option? Absolutely. It killed the 49ers on that last drive. But again, this defense, if you look at how hard it fought just to preserve a tie at the end of regulation, these guys were gassed. And it really, really would have taken that third down play with the blown pass protection in overtime where the 49ers had the ball to score. It really would have taken a touchdown on that play for the 49ers to win this game. They didn't get it. And you can go back to Shanahan on that. You could say, okay, well, he should have been treating that as 4-down territory, knowing that about his defense. Hindsight's 20/20, guys. I'm analyzing this game 12 hours later. I'm looking at this 12 hours later, and I see, okay, the 49ers defense wasn't ready to get a stop against Patrick Mahomes on that final drive, but they could have hoped for a takeaway. They thought maybe it was a higher percentage play in that point than going for it on fourth down. It's one that people are going to argue about forever. I do know that Shanahan was aggressive in this football game. I remember the fourth down that he went for in the fourth quarter that set up the Juwan Jennings touchdown. That was the throw to Kittle, dove for the first down over there near the pylon. I remember the Juwan Jennings trick play. That was an aggressive play. It was a hell of a throw from Juwan Jennings cross field to Christian McCaffrey for the touchdown. I mean, Shanahan was in his bag play calling wise at several junctures of this game. Sometimes you just get beat. Sometimes it's professional sports and you're playing a really balanced team. We talked about how balanced the Chiefs were. They played really good defense. Spagnuolo dialed up a hell of a game plan. Patrick Mahomes was really struggling through stretches, but he got the job done when it really mattered. Sometimes you just lose, and sometimes it happens in agonizing fashion. Of course, stuff goes wrong, and of course, we're talking about it right now. But to act like you can put all the marbles of blame in one bucket and not understand the nuances of what was at play, that's what's ridiculous. I wouldn't, this is another thought. I've just put some thoughts down. I wouldn't discount the strength of the 49ers culture because we've already seen that locker room culture shine through prior to this game. The fact that the 49ers were able to withstand Super Bowl 54 in a devastating loss, the NFC title game in the 2021 season, the NFC title game in the 2022 season paired with the Brock Purdy injury. The fact that they were able to turn all those scars into fuel for the fire here in 2023, moving into the 2024 calendar year, that was impressive. That was a testament to the culture that they've built. I mean, it really is a brotherhood in there. They brought in good guys. They've got good coaching. I mean, while I'm walking through the locker room yesterday, and Chris Kasarik is just aimlessly pacing around the room. His eyes are welling with tears. He's so competitive, the 49ers defensive line coach, and he hurt so much, not just for himself, but for his players. I mean, Nick Bosa was hurt. I told you about Christian McCaffrey, top of this article. Christian it looked like he was a ghost. All the color just vanished from his face. He was just sitting there, stone-faced. Nobody could make eye contact with anybody. Bosa, everybody was just seeing through people. Diomede Lenore told me that he didn't hear what Kyle Shanahan said in his post-game speech because he was crying. I mean, these guys put everything out on the line. And, I think one of the most telling aspects of what was happening in that locker room was Kyle Juszczyk was going around and he was just telling guys how thankful he was to have shared this journey in 2023 with them. He was expressing this gratitude for his teammates that I don't think that you see at the NFL level, especially after a devastating loss like this. And first off, a team with a poor culture would never get to the point to play this game because a team with a poor culture would have been derailed by at least one of the very, very brutal losses in the playoffs that had suffered in the years prior. So in a roundabout way and in a rather torturous way, the 49ers in this game set themselves up for greater heartbreak based on how good of a culture they have and based on how far they were able to pull this thing. Because every subsequent scar, I mean, it's just a lashing, right? Every single one hurts more. I think 49ers fans can attest to this now. Like, you lose Super Bowl 54, great. Yeah, that's painful. But then it seemed that 2021 Rams game hit even deeper in the conference title. Then it seemed that Eagles game, well, that was brutal because they never had a chance because Brock Purdy got hurt. And then you have this, which I think everybody would agree takes the cake. It was the most agonizing loss out of all of these. So you look at that and you say, well, geez, they fought so hard. They showed such resilience just for this reward, just to get to a point where they would lose in even more devastating fashion. That's the deal that the 49ers made. Like, well, are you kidding me? And I just shrug and I say, yeah, that's exactly what happened here. But by the same token, you cannot discount the 49ers culture, putting them in position, or at least giving them the framework to be back in position to make another run next year and beyond. And you can't discount the fact that Brock Purdy went toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes. That's the reason why here in Vegas, the 49ers are already betting favorites for the next Super Bowl. If I'm going to criticize Kyle Shanahan about any strategic decision first, like what's at the top of the list, it was that he left timeouts in his pocket at the end of the first half. Basically left 3 timeouts in his pocket. He finally called one when the Chiefs had the ball right before they kicked the field goal with Harrison Butker there down 10-0. But Shanahan entered halftime with 2 timeouts and kneeling, right? He was kneeling with Brock Purdy. You've got to use those timeouts with a minute left to get the ball back for Purdy and potentially go downfield and kick a field goal before halftime. Jake Moody kicked a pair of 50-plus yard field goals yesterday. So the 49ers obviously had trust in their kicker. Didn't appear that Shanahan had trust in his own process, though, at the end of the first half. So if there was a strategic gaffe, it wasn't in overtime. The 49ers defense needed that rest badly. They were leaking so much oil of exhaustion. And, the Greenlaw injury really opened everything up for the Kansas City Chiefs as far as those crosses over the middle went. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But leaving timeouts in the pocket at the end of the first half, especially after Greenlaw had gotten hurt, so the 49ers should have known that they were going to need to score some points to hold on to that win. That was the big mistake that Kyle Shanahan made in this game. But yeah, they didn't need to run more. That's completely debunked by the data. Again, those of you just joining, I know that we have some new viewers, but the 49ers early rush versus early pass success rate and EPA per play, well, EPA per play, they were terrible running on early downs and they were great passing on early downs. The Chiefs were gambling with their blitzes, 9 unblocked pressures. So the 49ers needed to pass earlier, but they just needed to pick the blitzes up better and they needed to have better hot routes. That's where they went wrong. They went wrong as far as the schematics of the pass game. They didn't go wrong as far as not running enough. So it wasn't about the OT strategy. It wasn't about running more. It was about leaving timeouts in pocket at the end of the half. And, maybe that was one of the reasons why Kyle Shanahan did leave timeouts in his pocket. Maybe he didn't trust his protection plan against all those Spagnuolo blitzes. Maybe he was afraid that one of those blitzes would blow Brock Purdy up and create a giveaway and set Kansas City up for more points. But at that point, that's tacit admission that your game plan is not up to par. So Spagnuolo, I thought, really won that game for Kansas City yesterday. Chris Jones, Steve Spagnuolo, but Spagnuolo's the one that was scheming open these unblocked rushers. I would say that he was the most valuable figure in this game. If they could give an MVC, a most valuable coach, I think that would go to the Chiefs defensive coordinator, Steve Spagnuolo. Of course, the Greenlaw injury, that was brutal for the 49ers. Before that injury in the second quarter, if you discounted the long bomb that they threw to Mahomes to Mecole Hardman, where Tashawn Gibson seemed to lose the ball in the lights. It should have been intercepted. That was a very interceptable pass. If you discount that, the Chiefs were at 2.5 yards per play and 0 points before Greenlaw got hurt. Greenlaw was playing as a hybrid of Patrick Willis and Navarro Bowman yesterday before he got hurt. I likened the Greenlaw injury yesterday to the Navarro Bowman injury in the NFC Championship game against the Seattle Seahawks. That was a torn ACL. This was an Achilles. It's going to be tough for Greenlaw, too, to come back because he's a speed guy. He was the fastest player on Arkansas's defense, measured by those GPS chips. Former safety, lefty back when he played quarterback, by the way. I mean, Greenlaw is a stud, all based on speed, and it's really, really tough to pop an Achilles and come back at full speed. But anyway, remember when Bowman got hurt up in Seattle in the NFC Championship game? That was crushing. This had those types of vibes to me, especially the fact that he got hurt in such a freakish way. And that's, I guess, how Achilles pops happen. They're non-contact injuries. He was running out onto the field. He's trying to run out onto the field, and he popped his Achilles. It happened earlier than that Bowman injury against Seattle, but like I said, the Chiefs were at 2.5 yards per play before then. If we discount the one that Gibson should have intercepted, because I really think he lost it in the lights. And after that, they just started going to crossers. The 49ers would dial up some pressure, or Bosa would win. And yes, the Chiefs do hold a lot. There was a lot of holding from Kansas City that went uncalled. It's all over the internet. You can go and check it out, especially from Donovan Smith, left tackle. But right tackle, Jawan Taylor was holding too. We saw the interior holding on a Fred Warner blitz. Jerick McKinnon was trying to pick up Fred Warner, grabs him because Warner danced around him. Nice explosive blitz, no call. Donovan Smith, no call. Yeah, I get it. A lot of holding. 49ers up front. It was a throwback kind of game. The Chiefs needed to hold to give Mahomes some time, and they were counting on Bill Vinovich and the crew to not make those calls, and they didn't. They let them play, as has been their reputation. But the crossers over the middle, those were plays that I don't think that the Chiefs are able to consistently deliver if Dre Greenlaw is in the game, because he's the enforcer. He's the guy that hits people. He's the guy that scares you from coming across the middle, even though the rules have changed in the NFL to really make enforcers less effective, right? You can't dish out the same kind of contact and the same kind of fear that you did before. But I really do think that the Greenlaw injury was a big impact on this football game. All right, we're going through a lot of this. My article, The Emotions of the Locker Room, up on the screen. I'll tell you, I told you about Kasarik and his eyes welling up with tears. I told you about McCaffrey, Kyle Juszczyk, Trent Williams. He's just shaking his head. I talked to all these guys too. I talked to Purdy, Williams. Talked to all, not in this, let me thrust the microphone in your face format. I don't really believe in that in these situations. If somebody's talking to a bunch of cameras, I'll come up and I'll hear what they have to say. And then you guys saw some of those videos. But for me, it's my job, because I'm fortunate enough to have this job and to have this access, to have this vantage point. It is my job to be the intermediary between you're watching me, and what's actually happening in the building, right? So you have to go into that locker room after a loss like that. You have to shake people's hands. You have to, and yes, there was a lot of humanity at play in this loss. I mean, in the aftermath, you saw how the 49ers deal with grief, like the immediate onset of grief. If and when this team does ultimately reach the summit of Mount Everest, you will look back on how they initially had to go through the fire of anguish in that locker room yesterday. And that there, you'll appreciate how they turned. I had to write what I did. Sorry for having some connection issues here. That's why I had to write what I did. and it's up on the screen. So go ahead and check that out. That's on my Twitter. Maybe Mike can toss the article into the description. Kevin Bartram, thank you. I just see. Yeah, and I'm sorry if I'm breaking up because I'm on hotel Wi-Fi right now. I can't do anything about it, guys. I'm not at home. I'm in Las Vegas. So I'm doing my best. Maybe I can crank this down. Maybe this will get a little bit better. Look at this idiot. I should reconsider my career. The clown cannot even pay his internet bill. Yeah, I'm in a hotel in Las Vegas, man. You couldn't even pay probably to get to a football game in your own city. Actually, there isn't a football game being played in your own city because the Raiders aren't in Oakland anymore. Funny. I think the A's are leaving Oakland too, right? Are we doing better with the reception now? I think that I toned down the camera. Yeah, that guy's not going to resurface anymore. We took care of him. Anyway, Sean Bartram, thank you. Your comment disappeared because there's so many of them, but I appreciate it. Christopher Lockwood, thank you. Is it fuzzy and pixelated? It's funny. We lost Ian Lindsay. Ian Lindsay's not talking much anymore. Appreciate you, Mr. Nobody. There we see a lot of heartbreak from I'm here to contextualize for you. One of the things I talked about yesterday is that this is not new for the 49ers franchise. Losing to a power twice in the postseason is not new. The 49ers lost to the Cowboys in the NFC title games in 1992 and 1994. They beat that Super Bowl victory. And it's the same thing they have to do now. They've lost to the Chiefs twice, and they may have to beat the Chiefs on the third time if they want. Purdy's 24 years old. Brock Purdy is going to get his first full off season under his belt. It is time to sit back and watch what the 49ers do this off season. Thank you, Ryan. It's difficult to look at starting over again with that article. It's like, what are you going to do? Sit around and feel sorry for yourself? That's what losers do. You pick up and you go again. You know, that whole alpha mentality is about taking a gut punch and being able to get back up and go out after again. If you're just going to sit around feeling sorry for yourself, then you're going to end up like that guy Ian who was trying to comment on here. You're going to end up angry. You're going to be losing your teams to other cities, and you're not going to be able to cope with it. So it's like it's one of those things where you absolutely just you have to take the anguish and channel it in a productive direction. And for fans, it's really difficult because you're not actually playing. But here, I'm documenting what these men in that locker room are trying to accomplish moving forward, and I'm telling that story, right? And the reason that they've gotten so far, despite a lot of the anguish of years prior, is because they have had the character, they've had the ability, they've had the resilience to continue pushing forward and using the disappointment as fuel. And that's what the 49ers are going to have to do moving forward. Yeah, Ian's combusting. We haven't heard from him in a while. Very satisfying. Christopher Lockwood has some historical perspective. Cowboys in 92 and 93, Packers from 95 to 97. The 49ers losing to the Packers, yeah. The 0-2. Oh, you're just talking about playoff losses, yeah. So to the Cowboys, to the Packers, to the Bucks in 0-2 and 0-3. No, the Packers were in 0-2. Yeah, I remember that. That was Lambeau. The Bucks were in 0-3. Harbaugh lost 11-13, and then Shanahan in 19-23. Purdy needs to step up and defeat the odds. You know, the 49ers had a tortured time through the 1970s when they finally broke through with the catch. They lost back-to-back playoff games against the Cowboys in the early 1970s at Kezar and then at Candlestick, including one where Dallas needed an onside kick. And then it was a long drought there where they didn't even go to the playoffs. And then Joe Montana showed up and threw the catch to Dwight Clark, and then they won the Super Bowl against the Bengals. Then they had a dynasty. Even over the course of the dynasty, they had gut-wrenching playoff losses, including 92 and 93 to Dallas. They got over the hump of Dallas. They won that Super Bowl. Then they lost a bunch straight to the Packers, 3 in a row. They got over the hump of Green Bay. They didn't win the Super Bowl, though. That was painful. The Harbaugh era, I mean, sports, there are more lows than highs. Only 1 out of 32 teams is going to win every single year. That's just the reality of it. And the Chiefs have prevented the 49ers from winning it all twice at this point. Doesn't mean that the 49ers aren't a model organization. They are a model organization. They just haven't been able to kick the door down and win it all. The rest of the league is looking at Kansas City and San Francisco as the 2 pillars of what to do in the NFL. So you just have to keep on chopping wood. You have to keep grinding. You've got to come back to work. You've got to add more fuel to the fire moving forward. We still haven't heard from Ian again. That's funny. I keep on scrolling here, seeing if he's talked again, but he kind of crawled into a hole. Troll behavior. Robert McAvoy. Quit being crybabies. Get over it. Real men brush themselves off and go get after it. I've been a Niner fan, seen it all, highs and lows. This generation is weak. Yeah, you got to get after it. You have to pick yourself back up and do what the 49ers have done in recent seasons, and that is get back after it and reach new highs. I mean, last year NFC Championship game. This year they got to the Super Bowl. If that trend continues, if they can get a step further next year, they're going to be holding the trophy next year. Nobody said it would be easy. Nobody's saying that this isn't agonizing. It is absolutely agonizing for the 49ers and for their fans. I get it. But you have to use it as fuel for the fire moving forward. Is it safe to say that as long as Purdy continues to perform at an elite level, this team can be back to Super Bowls for year to back to the Super Bowl for years to come? Yeah, of course. Purdy is elite. The offense has weapons. They're all under contract. That's all you need when your defense is also playing well. You need to continue delivering sound process on a day in and day out basis so that you give yourself the best chance to deliver when you hit the moment of truth. The moment of truth came yesterday. The 49ers gave themselves a hell of a good chance. They weren't able to get it done. So you just have to keep on chopping wood, and ultimately you'll get there. This is not the first time that a team has been heartbroken. It's not the first time that the 49ers have gone through anguish. It might be the most agonizing, especially for a lot of the younger fans right now, but it doesn't mean that you can stop working. This is professional sports. This is life. You could sit here complaining on a comment section, but you're not really addressing the issue moving forward. And what the players and what the coaches and what the organization is going to have to do is continue working so it can address some of the things that went wrong for them in the game yesterday. I will be on KMBR here in a few minutes, so I'm going to have to get going in a couple. The Eagles really just pick up Vic Fangio? Wow, the plot thickens in the NFC. I'm going to break down the 49ers cap situation, who they need to re-sign, who they might not re-sign, what their spending capabilities are. We'll all get into that. There's several names on the list, and there are every year. But I think that just to give you a summary, paying Brandon Ayuk is at the top of the 49ers list. That is going to be a priority for them this offseason. I mean, the way that he beat L'Jarius Sneed on that third down, he was wide open in the end zone. It's too bad that the 49ers saw that pass protection breakdown in front of Brock Purdy, because they would have scored that touchdown. All right, everybody. Thank you. What a fun show. This was good. I'm happy that we were able to sit down and talk about some of your frustrations. I'm going through. It's just too bad. That one guy who was trolling earlier. I don't. He disappeared. I wish that he would have stayed on. I wish that we would have heard from him more. Can't see him anymore. It's too bad. He lost his team and he lost the battle in the chat section. Everybody take care.